Okay, little bonus episode here. One more little thought that I kind of wanted to just tack on. Again, this was included in the original recording, so I'm just kind of in post production, giving some comments here before kind of jumping back into what I recorded a little while ago. So once I once I decided to split this episode, this whole big episode up into smaller bits, I kind of knew that this section needed to be bracketed off on its own. It's just a little tag-along thought to close this thing out. Really, it's kind of less than a little 10-minute comments on this topic. But I've been so very tempted to kind of expand this now that I'm kind of breaking it off into its own thing. I'm like, oh, now I can spend some more time on this one. Uh, Very very tempted to do that. I'm not going to. Gonna leave it kind of as it stands. But so this is going to be a very very high level answer to a very nuanced and deep question. So this is more going to be, let me give you the outline. Let me give you some exposure to the kind of lines of thought that start to address this question. Is not going to be comprehensive. If you're listening to this and you're like, I kind of am hearing some things and I want to go a little bit deeper, I'd love to talk about this. This is super interesting to me. Maybe I'll circle back around to this someday in the future, but yeah, no promises on that. So just some food for thought here. Yeah, so you'll remember kind of at the start of the series, I compared the difficulty and complexity of the doctrine of divine simplicity with the difficulty and the complexity of the doctrine of the Trinity. Now, so now, what happens when you try to bring those two doctrines together into conversation? It gets incomprehensible multiplied by incomprehensible. There's some knots to untangle, I suppose. But actually, it's really fruitful. It's really a helpful exercise to think about if both of these things are true, simplicity and Trinity, how do they complement each other? How do they fit together? How do they make sense of each other? And actually, they do start to kind of mutually explain each other and mutually reinforce each other. So that's a little bit of what I want to just kind of expose you to and just put in front of you. Yeah, I would love to do another hour or two on this question, but that's just not where I'm at right now. If I had nothing else going on, we'd probably jump into it, but that's not the world we live in. Maybe someday, not today. So take this kind of as a food for thought thing, as a here's some interesting ideas. Go ahead and chew on this. Otherwise, yeah, this is just a quick teaser here at the end. So, anyways, let's go ahead and jump back into where I left off. Okay. One last issue that I just want to kind of touch on to close this out. Basically, it's kind of the nagging question that I alluded to before. Is the doctrine of divine simplicity in tension with the doctrine of the Trinity? Does the radical oneness of God compromise the threeness of the persons? Uh, Kind of a big question to just kind of tack on at the end, but maybe just food for thought, I suppose. So no, surprisingly, it actually is necessary to have a biblical understanding of the Trinity. For the biblical doctrine of the Trinity to hold, you kind of need the doctrine of simplicity. So simplicity affirms that it is the one undivided essence of God that subsists in the three persons. The persons are not parts of God. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are not parts of God. And neither are they, three separate but equal gods. There is one undivided divine essence, and that essence undividedly subsists in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The Bible teaches that Father, Son, and Spirit are equal in every way, the only distinction being the divine processions, or what's often called their relations of origins. So the Father is unbegotten, the Son is begotten by the Father, and the Holy Spirit is eternally breathed out by Father and Son. So simplicity teaches that the one undivided essence subsists in the Father unbegottenly, and eternally generates the person of the Son, and through him breathes forth the Spirit to share in the same divine essence. Since the essence is simple, it can't change or be kind of diminished in this process of eternal procession. This means that the Son and the Spirit aren't kind of diminished or second-hand subsistences of the one divine essence, but are equal to the Father in every way. But also, simplicity insists that the one divine essence can't be split or duplicated either, right? So while the Son and the Spirit share in the same divine essence qualitatively, like how you and I share the same human nature, they also share the same undivided nature quantitatively, right? So I have one human nature, you have another human nature, together we have two human natures. But the persons in God, the Father has the divine nature, the Son has the divine nature, the Spirit has the divine nature, and together they all have one divine nature. So if you add up all three of their natures, you get one divine nature. So remember the kind of essence existence distinction. If there were a real distinction between God's essence and his existence, then there could be three instantiations of divineness, right? Like how you and I are two instantiations of humanness. But since God is metaphysically simple, the three subsistences of the divine nature are still one existence of the one divine essence. Or if God were not simple, then his nature could be passed on kind of partially or in a lesser degree, meaning that, the Father could be the biggest and best God, and the Son could be, 90% God, and the Spirit maybe 75% kind of a derivative God. And this is kind of more or less what Arius got into, but that's kind of a story for another day, I suppose. So divine simplicity, right, is actually, contrary to what we might expect, is actually necessary to affirm the true unity of the one divine being and the true equality of the three persons. So to get Trinity, you actually kind of need simplicity. Augustine, again, in that same section of City of God that I referenced earlier, basically applies simplicity to the Trinity. Right? He says, "For what is begotten by the simple good is equally simple, identical in nature with its begetter. This Trinity is one God. The fact that it is a Trinity does not mean that it is not simple. For when we speak of this good as being by nature simple, we do not mean that it consists solely of the Father, or solely of the Son, or solely of the Holy Spirit, or that there is really only a nominal Trinity without subsistent persons. That is the notion of the Sabellian heretics. What is meant by simple is that its being is identical with its attributes. Apart from the relation in which each person is said to stand to each other, when each divine person is regarded in himself, not in relation to the other, his being is identical with his attributes. Thus, each in himself is said to be living because he has life, and at the same time, he himself is life." To oversimplify a bit, I suppose. Basically, simplicity doesn't override Trinity, but on the other hand, Trinity doesn't override simplicity. So Anselm does this too. So I skipped Anselm in kind of the survey earlier because I just wanted to save him in this quote for this little bit on the Trinity. So Anselm was a medieval theologian who was born in 1033 and died in 1109, kind of about 100 years before Aquinas was born. So he argues that divine simplicity is actually necessary to guarantee the equality of the divine persons. He says, kind of praying directly to God, he says, "You are so simple that there cannot be born of you any other than what you are, nor can there proceed from your supreme simplicity what is other than that from which it proceeds. Thus, whatever each is singly, that the whole Trinity is altogether, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Since each singly is not other than the supremely simple unity and the supremely unified simplicity, which can be neither multiplied nor differentiated." End quote. Or, in English, basically saying, since there are no parts in God, when the Father begets the Son, if he is anything like the Father, he is exactly like the Father. And the same for the Holy Spirit. Right? The Son and the Spirit can't be mostly or almost like the Father, since the Father is purely simple. It's all or nothing. Either the whole, undivided, simple, divine nature, or none of it. And since the supreme simplicity can't be multiplied, can't be divided, there can be no second or third divine nature. You can't just multiply his nature, but only kind of a second subsistence in the same infinite nature. So for Augustine and for Anselm, far from being this tension in the doctrine of the Trinity, simplicity actually guarantees a biblical approach to the Trinity. Three perfectly equal persons subsisting in one and the same divine nature. In other words, without simplicity, it's really hard to avoid some common Trinity errors. If God isn't materially simple, why couldn't the persons just be kind of three parts of the one God? If God isn't conceptually simple, why couldn't the three persons kind of have varying degrees of godness? Like the Father is the first and best God, and the Son is kind of a second derivative God, and then the Spirit is kind of a third, more derivative yet God. Without simplicity, why would that not be a possibility? But then if God isn't metaphysically simple, why couldn't there just be three equal gods? So at the end of the day, simplicity is actually one of the best defenses that we have for protecting good biblical Trinitarianism. All right, well, for real this time, that's all I have for now, I suppose. Anyways, I hope this has been helpful.